by reducing the risk of COVID-19 being spread in our community. All essential travel, non-essential travel should be cancelled or postponed as a result immediately. So our messaging is around that very clearly. Don't come to Queensland unless you have an essential purpose. We accept that there's going to be some significant impact upon persons who are ordinarily crossing our border daily. And we will give messaging around that so people clearly understand how they're impacted, particularly those that live in border communities. However, essential services, lawful businesses and trade will not be impacted. We'll provide information to these people who regularly cross the border for the work purposes and give them advice of how we're going to manage that so that we can make it as seamless as possible. We ask our community for a high level of compliance, and we will be showing a high level of compassion and communication while we deal with them. We acknowledge that this inconvenience may be quite challenging for some people, but we appeal to them to comply with our directions to help manage the impact of COVID-19 on our community. And you will see police officers and other officials, government officials, out on the road as of 1 minute past midnight tomorrow night, making sure that these measures work. If any person is allowed to come into Queensland, they have to recognise that if they don't have these reasons to come into us, an essential purpose, they will be required to do 14 days self-quarantine regardless of whether they are symptomatic or not. Thank you. Sure. Work, they need to go to a doctor, they need to go do something that's about keeping them alive, resupplying. We will work through that with them. But if they just wish to go and do a visit, it's probably not going to happen. Socialising about going to the cafe in Queensland instead of the one in Tweed Heads, that's not the sort of thing that people should be doing. Yeah, look, we're working on that at the moment, Liam, trying to find something really simple to be able to identify those cars that can come through so that people can get through very quickly. Obviously, we don't want to limit interstate supplies, so we are working on methodologies which will allow things such as trucks and that have a lawful purpose to come through rather quickly. So you're working on the laws at the moment, are you? So tomorrow night you'll see visible presence of police. What we're doing in here is trying to get our community to comply with what we're trying to achieve here. So we will continually monitor that level of compliance. Overall in Queensland to date with our social distancing compliance, it's been very good. The community is listening. So if we find that people are compliant with the measures we put in place tomorrow night, we will stick with that. If not, we will increase the restrictions. Yes, there are. You'll see messaging in a lot of places, but you know the fact about this is that what we're trying to do is reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19. So that's about the big numbers of people that are coming across. The fact that someone might sneak through somewhere in the back of beyond on some dirt track is probably not the focus for this. This is really about the big numbers of people on major corridors, but there will be things in place, and people need to be very careful about doing that because there will be consequences for not complying with the direction. No, if you can imagine, if you've ever been through an RBT in Queensland with police presence and you get pulled over, it'll be that kind of methodology. So obviously we'll stick to what works for us in terms of how we manage traffic and how we get traffic through quickly as possible, and that's the type of thing you can expect to see. If someone lives in the Tweed and works in Queensland, they'll be allowed to come through. We have members of our organisation that live in the Tweed and work on the Gold Coast.
There are some people around the Tweed region who can't understand this. What's your message to them to simply will it be police?
Yes, it will be police. So the simple message is that they really should be limiting the amount of movement they're doing anyway. This is really about reinforcing to our community that we don't want you travelling about unless you really need to. Stay at home and be safe and minimise the risk of contact with people. As Jeanette Young said, if you have contact with one person, that's one chance. If you have contact with 100 person, it increases your chances of 100 times of contracting the virus. So that's what we're trying to limit. Look, we're taking a very compassionate approach to this. This is really about information to start with, to make sure that people understand what's expected of them. But of course, if people choose to do the wrong thing, police always have the powers at their disposal to deal with poor behaviour. I think there's already been publication around the fines that are for non-compliance with the directions under the Act. Yep.
So there'll be police checkpoints? Will you close the small roads?
Yes, they'll be closed. All the border is closed, but as we know, the New South Wales-Queensland border is a rather large border, so we'll have measures in place against risk to our community around reducing the number of people that come across that border, right across the border, and including the Northern Territory border, of course, as well.
There is, someone drives from Tweed, goes up to the checkpoint on Wednesday. What do they need to convince an officer that they can get through?
Well, if they can, put it simply, if you're a Queenslander coming back into Queensland, there's not going to be any issue for you. You'll be allowed to come in, and obviously they may well be driving a Queensland registered car with a Queensland address. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about. For other people, we're working on online engagement to give them information so that they can understand what's required of them. People can expect to see today and tomorrow increased information around that online and through the media around the types of things that they need to be able to do to demonstrate that they have a lawful purpose for coming through.
Tweed Council at least 10,000 people who live in Tweed, for instance, in just that catchment, who work on the Gold Coast. So what are those 10,000 do?
Well,
Online.
So we'll look at something indicative of them. We're working through this at the moment, like a sticker on a car or something that they can put on their dashboard so that we can see really quickly that it's okay for those people to come through.
Can you get it online?
We're working through that at the moment, so we'll give advice about how that's going to happen. It has to be ready for tomorrow night, obviously.
Domestic flights, how about the police?
So we're working through that at the moment, but there will be police and other officials at the airports that will meet people as they come off the airlines. And there'll be obviously questioning about why are they returning to Queensland, are they a resident, where have they been? And similarly to the advice I've just given you, if they don't meet the essential travel requirements, or indeed if they've been exposed to someone who's had COVID or been overseas in the last 14 days, or are showing any symptoms, they'll have to go into self-quarantine. If they have no reason to come to Queensland within the exemptions, they'll still be required to go into self-quarantine for 14 days.
So you can't stop people flying in.
We're not stopping people coming in at all because obviously they get on those planes in the other states. That's outside of our jurisdiction. But we are working with the airlines to provide information so people know before they get on those flights what will happen when they get to Queensland.
Any cruise ships come to Queensland?
Not aware of any, but we have already had in place very strong measures at the ports for some time, being managed by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. So the ports are less of an issue for us. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. And look, what we're seeing is obviously less travel on our roads at the moment anyway. So look, the community is doing the right thing. So I just really stress to everyone, keep listening to authorities. And over the coming days and weeks, of course, there's going to be even more restrictions that will probably be announced. And I just urge everyone to please do the right thing. We're in this together and let's get through it. All right, today the Deputy Premier and I are announcing a $4 billion support package